My presentation today is based on my PhD dissertation accomplished last year at the Humboldt University in Berlin, in which I have studied one of the most widely circulated astronomical texts in Arabic and Latin scholarship during the pre-Copernican era. I hope that this research will contribute to a better understanding of the relationship between astronomical and medical literature, a combination of expertise that can be observed in numerous medieval scholars. My research aims to address the question of how the medieval astronomers engaged in both disciplines reflected on the similarities and differences in the methodology, subject matters, and didactic strategies of the two fields. Al-Farghānī's treatise, commonly referred to as the Elements of Astronomy, is one of the first authored treatises influenced by Claudius Ptolemy's Al-Majus, translated in Arabic, which was written in the middle of the numerous attempts to produce a trustworthy Arabic translation of the Al-Majus. Al-Farghānī was born in Farghana in Central Asia and flourished in Baghdad, where he not only wrote significant scholarly treatises, but also made enduring engineering contributions to the Abbasid Empire that are still preserved today, including the Great Nilometer in Cairo. His Elements of Astronomy has contributed to the dissemination of Ptolemaic astronomy in the medieval world as one of the successful educational texts in the classical Islamic world, as well as in Europe through its Latin and Hebrew translations. The existing studies on the Elements of Astronomy have primarily focused on its technical aspects, evaluating it largely as a straightforward and non-innovative take on Ptolemy's models. However, an unanswered question remains. Why does the structure of this text drastically deviate from that of the Almagest? The Elements of Astronomy lacks any diagrams or tables, and it presents astronomical theories, including planetary models, solely through continuous text without visual aids. The answer to this question will enhance our understanding of the connection between scientific content and literary and presentational techniques. I began my investigation by examining the title assigned to this work by Al-Farghānī, which luckily has been preserved within the title paragraph, despite the fact that this text was given various titles in different languages by medieval copyists and booksellers. The title paragraph concisely conveys three significant aspects of the text: the name of its author, its subject matter or title, and its structure comprising 30 chapters. Given the brevity of this paragraph, it is remarkable that the text is introduced with a rather complex title. If it was a treatise related to the Almagest, why not explicitly mentioning Ptolemy's well-known title instead of employing a dual subject, emphasizing the distinction between knowledge of the stars and celestial motions? Additionally, what precisely was the summarization approach, or in Arabic, jawāmiʿ, that Al-Farghānī intended to apply? In a rather extensive introduction to his other work on astrolabe, Al-Farghānī explains that he undertook its composition in response to a challenge posed by the renowned philosopher Al-Kindi concerning the construction of an astrolabe. Inspired by this intellectual rivalry, Al-Farghānī planned to create a comprehensive treatise that could allow him to effectively discredit Al-Kindi's theory. Consequently, he chose to entitle his work The Perfect, signifying his goal to provide an all-inclusive counter-argument. This observation acknowledges that Al-Farghānī was intentional in the naming his scientific works. As mentioned above, the peculiar title of the Elements of Astronomy was often simplified or replaced by those who used it. This led to the emergence of multiple titles. In an intriguing case, the Arabic manuscript utilized by Jakub Gulius in his 17th century Arabic and Latin edition reversed the order of the two parts of the title, placing celestial motions before knowledge of the stars. Gulius's edition also played a significant role in establishing the elements of astronomy as the accepted title for Al-Farghānī's work, a designation that persisted until today. Going back to the 9th century, it becomes apparent that the recognition of the Al-Majest as a book encompassing two distinct subjects was not exclusive to Al-Farghānī. In the introduction to the Arabic translation of the Al-Majest by Al-Hajjaj, which predates Al-Farghānī's composition of the elements of astronomy and is preserved in a single manuscript, a similar approach to introducing the Al-Majest appears. Likewise, Al-Ya'qubi, the renowned historian of the same era who provided concise explanations of significant scientific works of his time, also presents the Al-Majest with a dual subject, making a distinction between knowledge of the stars and heavenly motions. Another evidence from the 7th century further aids in demarcating the division within the Al-Majest. Ibn Masrur, in his work The Reasons of the Sages, asserts that the scientific content of the Al-Majest, especially the discussion of celestial motions, begins when Ptolemy starts to elucidate the two fundamental principles of epicycle and eccentricity. This occurs at the outset of the 3rd section of Book 3 of the Al-Majest, where Ptolemy lays the foundation for planetary models, beginning with the sun. Now let us see how Al-Farghānī structured his summary of the two parts. Here you can see the titles of all 30 chapters of the elements of astronomy, which broadly follows the organization of materials in the Al-Majest. The section on planetary models begins at chapter 12, offering a comprehensive explanation of celestial configuration and spanning 18 chapters. In contrast, the preceding section primarily deals with Ptolemy's cosmological accounts, a general introduction to primary motions, zodiacal signs, horary and climatic divisions, and geographical place names. The first part, although shorter in terms of the topics discussed, covers approximately 45% of Al-Farghānī's entire work. A notable imbalance with Ptolemy's approach is evident since these subjects constitute less than 20% of the Al-Majest, despite his long mathematical proofs. It appears that Al-Farghānī's policy of summarization is more generous in the first part, while more concise in the second. This difference may also suggest that Al-Farghānī's audience had a greater interest in the initial subjects compared to what Ptolemy intended for his Greek readers. To gain a clearer picture of the distinct yet interconnected topics addressed in the two parts, a comparison of term frequencies is presented here. While the first part predominantly focuses on subjects related to daily changes, the observer's position on Earth, and divisions of time, the second part primarily delves into the concept required for the planetary models and their motions along the ecliptic. It seems that the relationship of the first subject was considerably large. These subjects dealing with timekeeping, climatic divisions, and cosmological principles didn't require the reader to engage with the intricate details of the more complex planetary theories that follow in the second section. The emphasis placed on the distinction between the two sets of themes in the Al-Majest during the 9th century might highlight the growing interest in astral knowledge among non-professionals. This interest, in turn, led to increased efforts to make technical texts more accessible, facilitating the dissemination of scientific knowledge beyond the realm of professional community. In the following part of my presentation, I will examine the educational significance of Al-Farghānī's text, emphasizing his innovative use of a summarization technique that was prevalent in medical literature during his era. The term jawāmiʿ that Al-Farghānī employed in his title actually refers to a well-established literary method from the 9th century. This method was predominantly utilized for translating Greek Alexandrian summaries. These summaries comprised a collection of 16 medical works designed to condense Galen's extensive writings and to facilitate medical education. They were mainly created and disseminated from the 5th to the 7th century of Common Era in the School of Alexandria. In the 9th century, the entire collection was translated into Arabic, serving as a didactical model for numerous other scientific works in Arabic that adopted the same jawāmiʿ title. The benefits of this collection for training physicians in the eyes of scholars within the Islamic societies is well preserved in a statement by the famous 9th century physician Al-Mousavi. It was believed that this collection of summaries effectively organized and condensed accumulated knowledge, making it easier for doctors to access a wide range of subjects, so accelerating their education. A widespread summarization technique in the Alexandrian collection was the method of diairesis. In Greek scholarship, diairesis served as a stylistic tool in rhetoric and literature. Its primary goal was to simplify the examination and understanding of relationships between concepts by employing successive divisions, comparisons, and sorting functions. These divisions were typically represented visually through branch diagrams. The adaptation of this literary technique by Alexandrian scholars and its reception in the Islamic world have been the subjects of several studies. The most in-depth study recently by Oliver Overbein suggests that upon the translation of these summaries into Arabic, their diagrammatic presentations underwent a format shift and were frequently converted into running texts. An excellent example of this reformatting procedure can be observed in the case of Galen's On the Science of Pulse, as shown on the left side of the slide. The Greek summary of this work, originating from the Alexandrian school, suggests that it was initially structured using a series of branch diagrams. However, the extant copies of the Arabic version all exist in the form of continuous text. While most sections maintain the same number of divisions and technical content, some scribes employed textual symbols and calligraphic techniques to preserve the sense of the classificatory narratives as illustrated here. The visualization of divisions appears also in a limited number of manuscripts within Islamic literature, as shown here. However, Emily Savage-Smith maintains that these representations introduce a novel approach to organizing ideas and are not mere imitations of Greek designs. The method of presentation embraced under the overarching category of summaries or jawāmiʿ extended beyond the realm of medical knowledge. While Al-Farghānī's Elements of Astronomy stands as the first known jawāmiʿ on astronomy to our knowledge, this structural approach continued to find use mainly in astrological works. In a 10th century example authored by the renowned astronomer Al-Sajzi, he underscores the value of the observer of his text, indicating his purpose to visualize the divisions. By emphasizing the role of the manuscript observer, he stresses the distinction between listeners or memorizers of the content and those who utilize the physical form of the book as an educational tool. Nonetheless, none of the existing copies of the Elements of Astronomy contains any diagrams, nor is there any mention of an observer for the text. Nevertheless, the efforts of certain scribes to highlight the classificatory accounts allow us to reconstruct the underlying intended branch diagrams. The literary structure of the classifications for the planetary models in the Elements of Astronomy adheres to a common pattern of the time, where each new class is presented in the form of as for X, then Y. In the manuscript preserved at the Princeton University Library, we can observe a scribe's endeavor to mark all the as for terms in red ink, making it easier to distinguish between different sections. By recognizing this style and giving it a visual presentation, we can uncover the author's original intention to provide systematic classifications for planetary latitudes and longitudes. An example of this can be seen in how Al-Farghānī explained the theory of latitudes in his 18th chapter through step-by-step divisions. The process begins with the most straightforward model, namely the sun with an altitude of 0, and progresses to more intricate cases and exemplified here by the inferior planets. The author's approach is to establish new criteria as the division advances, adapting to the distinct features and variables to accommodate all various motions within the classification. For instance, when considering the latitudes of the 5 planets, the author initially breaks them down into 2 components: the inclination of the eccentric orb from the ecliptic and the inclination of the epicycle from the eccentric orb. Subsequently, the strategy of from simple to complex and from general to a specific is applied to analyze and classify each category. In the case of Venus, for instance, there are 3 variables that undergo changes as the planet moves. These variables are defined based on the inclination of specific orbs and their relationship to the apsidal and nodal lines, specifying when they reach minimum or maximum values. Collectively, these factors distinguish Venus's latitude model from that of other planets. Therefore, in Al-Farghānī's classification system, these variables serve as key factors for conducting comparisons. As illustrated here, it is worth noting that the Al-Majid also sometimes invokes an analogical approach when examining the planetary models. However, these comparisons lack a comprehensive and systematic structure, as we see in case of the Elements of Astronomy. Nonetheless, these references might have encouraged Al-Farghānī for his extensive practice inspired by medical literature. I conclude this part of my presentation by discussing how the concept of classifying planetary motions were received in Europe, in European scholarship, through the translations of the Elements of Astronomy. The term that Al-Farghānī employed for classification, namely tasnīf, is actually a twofold term. Tasnīf, which literally means grouping, underwent a significant shift in meaning during the Islamic period, While in the 9th century and with the abundance of translated materials, tasnīf was primarily used as a tool for classification and organization, in later centuries, it became associated chiefly with authorial activities, often referring to the compilation of new texts, especially based on existing material. The urgent need in the early centuries of Islamic scholarship to systematize the growing knowledge was so pronounced that Gregor Schuler even refers to a tasnīf movement or classification movement during this era. This context leaves no doubt that Al-Farghānī's use of tasnīf was in line with its predominant usage of his time, namely classification. Here, the title of the 13th chapter in the Elements of Astronomy, which focuses on the classification of planetary longitudes, starting with the sun, the moon, and the fixed stars, is displayed. However, when this term reached Arabic to Latin and Hebrew translators, to the best of our knowledge, it was never interpreted as categorization. Below, we have the translations of the same section from 4 different editions of Al-Farghānī's text based on the medieval Latin and Hebrew translations. In none of these cases is tasnīf translated as classification. Instead, it is rendered as description, exposition, and model. In contrast, with the help of the valuable online Arabic and Latin glossary, we know that in some other translation cases, this term was interpreted as categorization, sorting, and division. It appears that the concept of classification or classifying celestial motions as practiced in medical teachings didn't gain acceptance in Latin astronomical scholarship through the translation of Al-Farghānī's work. As the final part of my presentation, I aim to explore the audience reception of Al-Farghānī's Elements of Astronomy within the Islamic world. The bibliographical evidence reveals that this text was extensively cited and utilized for the study of astronomy prior to Ibn al-Haytham's significant critique of astronomical works in the 11th century. Notably, even after Ibn al-Haytham's treatise gained widespread acceptance among professional astronomers following this period, Al-Farghānī's text not only retained its popularity, but also the majority of surviving manuscripts of this text belong to this period. After surveying the 18 existing manuscripts, I observed that only a few were part of collections of other mathematical and astronomical works. Most of the surviving copies are accompanied by non-astronomical texts, including those on medicine, alchemy, and occasionally on astrology. An interesting example is found in a manuscript preserved in Hagia Sophia Library in Istanbul, which includes a widely known text in the Islamic world, the pseudo-Aristotelian Hermetica. This hypothetical conversation attributed to Aristotle and addressed to Alexander the Great based on Hermetic knowledge claims to include crucial information needed by Alexander during his military journey when he lacks access to his teacher. Alongside details about occult sciences and talismans, a significant part of the treatise emphasizes the vital connection between astronomy and medicine. Aristotle advises Alexander that while he may conquer and subjugate the people of a country, he cannot alter its climate and environmental features, emphasizing the need for such knowledge for his personal health. In conclusion, Aristotle recommends using concise yet useful books prepared by him, attached to this note. The copyist or owner of the treatise prepared for a patron appended an older copy of Al-Farghānī's treatise at the end of this text, under the title A Brief Introduction to the Almagest, likely to substitute what the pseudo-Aristotle promised. This serves as an example of how Al-Farghānī's treatise found application among non-astronomer audience. More instances can be found in works on geography, climatic divisions, and wonders of the world, such as the treatise presented here on the right side of the slide, which cites Al-Farghānī as its source for knowledge about the dimensions of the world. This example also reminds us of the significant role assigned to astronomy in Hippocratic medicine, which was highlighted and emphasized by Galen to the extent that he promised to write an astronomical text for his students covering all necessary information. This title, mentioned only in a single Arabic commentary by Galen, has never been found, but perhaps ignited interests of scholars to write similar treatises. The intersection of studies examining both the literary and technical aspects of Al-Farghānī's elements of astronomy features important aspects of medieval scientific literature. It highlights that as the number of interested readers in a particular field of knowledge grows and diversifies, the demand for user-friendly texts increases. This inclusive approach has the capacity to push the boundaries of common methodologies, teaching methods, and lines of thought, fostering greater tolerance for new perspectives and approaches from other fields of knowledge. By adopting the comparative attitude from medical literature into the realm of astronomical knowledge, an innovative method for formulating planetary theories emerged, opening up new avenues for contemplating celestial configurations. This approach appears to have encouraged a focus on generality over a specificity when examining celestial motions, placing greater emphasis on the sources of distinctions between these motions. This research also underlines the importance of paying closer attention to the interdependence of medical and astronomical disciplines in the medieval world. It invites a more in-depth exploration of how these fields influence each other in terms of their methods of the preservation, organization, and presentation of information, and the management of the knowledge economy. Furthermore, it prompts an examination of the extent to which these disciplines were interconnected across various centuries and cultures. As Gerard Tumer has pointed out, it was only within the context of Islamic culture that an attempt was made to portray Galen as a young student of Ptolemy, despite the absence of supporting Greek evidence. Thank you very much.